Hello everyone. Welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and keep watching more details. Emmerdale's Jacob finally stands up to Dr. Todd, but there's a surprise. He's had enough of her put-downs. Jacob Gallagher made a bold move on Emmerdale as he finally stood up to Dr. Todd, but a surprise soon followed. With the beloved character giving his boss a piece of his mind, what will happen to Jacob next? Jacob has been learning the ropes in the hospital over the past few months, but his dreams of becoming a surgeon have taken several setbacks, namely because of the domineering and brutal Todd. Tonight's episode of the ITV soap began with Jacob grabbing something from the shop, though Carrie Wyatt noted that she had heard him throwing up earlier in the morning. He said that he was struggling with his shift pattern, with Carrie showing concern. She urged him to consider taking the shift off, but Jacob snapped at her and reassured her that everything was under control. He stormed off to work in a bad mood, which was set to worsen throughout the day. Upon his arrival, he was teased by a colleague that Todd was looking for him, but this turned out to be true. She carefully asserted her occupational superiority by gently belittling Jacob, and issued him with a cleaning task for his shift. Jacob couldn't hide his disappointment at the role, and said that he wanted to help people in urgent needs sooner rather than later. Todd said that he wasn't ready for that yet, and told him to wise up. Jacob apologized to Kim Tate for his part in the apparent misdiagnosing of her poisoning, and also spoke with Lydia Dingle on his way out. Todd, however, still wasn't impressed, and told the student to act more professionally in the workplace. Jacob later saw Todd being forthright with a patient, labeling him stupid for refusing treatment. Jacob was clearly troubled by how Todd was speaking to the man, but his colleagues told him to leave the situation alone. He later confronted Todd about the incident, and criticized her for shouting at the old man. She disclosed that the patient in question was her father, and that he was suffering from dementia. The pair had a heartfelt conversation, with Jacob sharing some details about his care for his own grandfather. Todd explained that she got into medicine after being inspired by her father's career, and wanted to make him proud. As her mood improved, she told Jacob to go home and dress up smartly for a conference with a well-regarded lecturer. It seems the pair are on better footing now after their discussion, but will it last? The corridor outside the treatment rooms felt longer than usual, as if the building itself were stretching under the weight of everything Jacob carried in his chest. The fluorescent lights hummed faintly above him, each flicker a reminder of the countless hours he'd spent here, studying, assisting, trying to prove himself. Trying to ignore the quiet, gnawing doubt that had taken root ever since Dr. Todd arrived. Jacob paused just outside the office door, his hand hovering inches from the handle. He could hear Todd's voice inside, low and clipped, speaking on the phone. Even without making out the words, Jacob knew the tone. Controlled, authoritative, the kind that made people fall into line without question. For weeks, Jacob had done just that. Not anymore, he muttered under his breath. He knocked, once firm and deliberate, and pushed the door open before he could lose his nerve. Dr. Todd looked up from behind the desk, one eyebrow raised in mild irritation. "I'm in the middle of something," he said, covering the phone receiver with his hand. "Make it quick." Jacob stepped inside and closed the door behind him. The click echoed louder than it should have. "It won't take long," Jacob replied, surprised at how steady his voice sounded. Todd studied him for a moment, then returned to his call. "I'll ring you back," he said curtly, hanging up. He leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. "Well," Jacob took a breath. "It's about the patient from this morning. Mrs. Hargreaves. You discharged her too early." Todd's expression didn't change. "I made a clinical decision based on the information available." "She was still in pain," Jacob insisted. "Her vitals were unstable, and you didn't even wait for the full results." "I don't need a lecture from a trainee," Todd snapped. "I've been doing this longer than you've been alive." Jacob felt the familiar sting of dismissal, but this time it didn't push him back. It pushed him forward. "That doesn't make you right," he said. The words hung in the air, sharp and unexpected. For a moment, Todd simply stared at him, as if recalibrating. "Careful," he said quietly. "You're stepping out of line." "No," Jacob replied, his heart pounding now but his resolve solid. "I'm stepping up. Someone has to." Todd stood, the chair scraping against the floor. "You think you know better than me?" "I think you're rushing decisions," Jacob said. "And I think you're not listening to patients or to the rest of the team." A tense silence followed. Outside, a trolley rattled past, voices murmuring faintly. Inside, the air felt heavy charged. Todd took a slow step forward. "You're risking your future here," he said. "Do you understand that?" Jacob swallowed, but didn't look away. If my future depends on staying quiet when something's wrong, then maybe it's not the future I want. The words surprised even him, but once spoken they felt right. Necessary. Todd's gaze hardened. You're making a mistake. Maybe, Jacob admitted. But at least it'll be my mistake. For a second it looked like Todd might explode, his jaw tightening, his hands curling slightly at his sides. But then something shifted. Not softening exactly, but recalculating. He exhaled slowly and turned away, walking back to his desk. You're passionate, he said almost grudgingly. I'll give you that. Jacob blinked, caught off guard by the change in tone. But passion without discipline is dangerous, Todd continued. You don't see the bigger picture yet. Then show me, Jacob said, before he could stop himself. Todd paused, one hand resting on the back of his chair. What? Show me the bigger picture, Jacob repeated. Explain your decisions instead of shutting people down. If I'm wrong, I'll learn. But if I'm right, he hesitated. Then patients deserve better. Another silence, different this time. Less confrontational. More uncertain. Todd studied him again, longer now. You really believe that, don't you? I do.